Okay, I will call our September 7th, 2022 Board of Selectmen meeting to order. All those that can, please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Kevin, will you, our new Finance Director, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I don't believe we have any additional agenda or consent calendar items. So moving on, is there anyone under delegations that would like to address the board? Don, if you could give us your name and address, please.
Frederica Gunther, 123 Pennsylvania Avenue, Niantic, Connecticut. I came tonight because there was a notice under East Lyme Community about SCORE, the group SCORE, that was supposedly coming to address racism, wanting racism to be a health crisis in East Lyme. So I don't know where anybody is. I guess they're not here. But anyhow, I wrote something, my thoughts on it, just in case. Did you know that they were coming, or did you see that posted?
I had heard that they might be attending, but
yeah,
they hadn't contacted us
so I
at
don't
the
know.
town hall.
But anyhow, I'm going to speak to that. I come here tonight to speak against SCORE's attempt to declare racism a health crisis in East Lyme. I am not sure why you would want to do that, and not sure what your organization gets by accomplishing this. Grants from the government, state, I'm not really sure what it's all about. This, to me, is an attempt to create more divisiveness. What do you base this on? I'm asking them. What is your end goal? The way to defeat racism by any group is to get to know people. Racist is a term used by many to identify anyone who does not agree with them, black, brown, or white these days. Let's stop the foolishness and let people live their lives in this unsettled world we live in. And I urge the board, which I think you have, to reject this proposal. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, we have the approval of minutes. First of all, from the public hearing of August 3rd.
Okay. Move to approve the public hearing minutes of August 3rd, 2022 as submitted.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So it's seconded. Any comments, corrections? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Moving on to the minutes of the regular meeting.
Move to approve the regular meeting minutes of August 3rd, 2022 as submitted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
One abstention. Carries 401. Moving on to the consent calendar.
Move to approve the consent calendar for the regular meeting of September 7, 2022 in the amount of $14,363.20.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That carries unanimously. Moving on, we have talking about the Nuclear Safety Emergency Program grant, a special appropriation. This is one of the things that we've talked about, which is it's not taxpayer dollars. This is grant money, but because of the way the charter reads, we have to appropriate this again, send it to finance, and then come back for a town meeting before it can be appropriated. But Julie is here to talk about it tonight. Julie, if you'd come up and give us your name and your title, and just give a little background on the grant so that the rest of the board.
Julie Wilson, 13 Park Place, Deputy Emergency Management Director for the town. Yes, exactly what Kevin just said. This is something that will hopefully in the near future change and become more simplified. These are guaranteed funds through the Nuclear Safety Emergency Planning Grant that is offered through the state. And this latest round, we have gotten $45,125 worth of equipment that has been approved for our EOC. You'll notice I'm only asking for a portion of that at this time because one of the major dispatch consoles is still an issue with trying to lock in a price and lock in the exact model that we're going to go with. So that's going to be at a later date, but we have until June 30th of 2023 to spend the funds. So we're just looking for the appropriation for the $25,948.80 to make the purchases for the items outlined.
Okay. Any questions for Julie?
That console that you still excluded is well within the money that you have retained?
It was originally requested at the last year's nuclear safety grant, but at the time when we had to order, it was not available. So we had to scratch that, and we moved forward with some other items in our phase, like we were going to postpone. We have a small kitchenette area in the EOC so that the command staff doesn't have to leave the EOC during an emergency. They have water, refrigerated items, access to food, that sort of thing. So that was moved up, and the console was pushed back. So we asked for it again in this round, and so we're hoping that by June 30th they will have what we need to make it a good fit. It needs to be able to coordinate and work with our current dispatch system. So there's a couple options on the table if the original one that we're hoping for falls through again.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, none, and
Okay, sure. Move to approve a special appropriation in the amount of $25,948.80 to cover the cost of purchasing the above listed equipment for the EOC and forward to the Board of Finance for action. Note, this requires a town meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dan. Any other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? It carries unanimously. Julie, thank you for everything you do. You're always finding money through grants. And people that have seen our EOC, when we've had a couple of things, when I've been at SCOG meetings, and I said, wow, you have a great, facility there. So thank you for all you did to help get that into the
Thank
situation.
you. When I tell you it's a labor of love, it was a labor of love. So it's
We're lucky to have
Yeah.
it.
So, and we got some drills coming up too.
yes, we do.
Yes, so, anyway. Okay, moving on. Alex Close, our town engineer, brought this to my attention, and we've been also getting some emails from people on Romagna Road, because there's a right-of-way that goes from Stonywood to Romagna Road for the town for emergency access if needed. Several times over the last several years, we've had that situation where Gorton Pond floods to where people up on Stonywood, Bush Hill cannot get out because of the road is flooded. There's just no way out. And a couple times when it happened about I think October of last year, there was a situation where we had to send a fireboat across, which is not there. So this is just in a conceptual phase now. We're researching it. There is no money in the budget, no money allocated, but we wanted to have this presentation for the board, and so that the people of Romagna Road know that this is something that we're talking about, but we're not even close to getting ready to start clearing trees yet. So I think that's the concern there. As I said, there's no money allocated for this yet, but it's something that we've identified as a need for emergency egress for people up in that area in the event of another storm. And Alex, just to let everybody know, Alex's birthday is today.
Happy birthday, Alex.
Good evening. For the record, Alex Close, town engineer. So yeah, just as Kevin said, we thought after speaking with the deputy director and Kevin that it was a good time to bring this to the board as we move through the conceptual phase. I think this has been discussed for several years, but never really brought to a point where there's been any kind of design. So essentially between the neighborhood that's accessed off of East Patagonia at Bush Hill has a little over 100 single-family residential dwellings there that only have one point in and out of East Pat, which is Bush Hill Road, which is very low and crosses over a brook that's downstream of Gorton Pond as part of the Patagonia River watershed. And it does flood every few years, and it is a concern for getting emergency vehicles in the case of an emergency scenario, whatever that may be. Or any time that we have a neighborhood, whether there's flooding or not, that only has one point in and out of the neighborhood, especially with that many homes, I'd like to take some function to address a secondary form of egress out of the neighborhood. So we looked at Romagna Road, which for everyone knows is off of Roxbury Road, which is if you take a left as soon as you go over the bridge when you're headed up 161 and you pass where the old salt shed used to be, you go down to the end of Romagna Road. It's a dead-end road there. Romagna Road is higher out of that waterway and traditionally hasn't had any issues from an access standpoint. And then just above, which would be to the west of, but significantly higher in elevation, is Stonywood. And so this plan would look at a connection from Romagna to Stonywood in what is already a 50-foot right-of-way that has been accepted in the past by the board and is considered owned by the town. That has been reviewed with the town's attorney, and he's in agreement with that the town would own that parcel and it would be acceptable to improve. So what the department has done before we wanted to bring this any further was verify with the Planning Commission, which under Connecticut, we call it an 824, it's Connecticut statute, section 8-24, any significant municipal improvement to roadways would have to be approved first by planning before, or would have to at least be approved by planning as some part of the process, even if the Board of Selectmen agrees to make an improvement or adopt a road. So we went before planning. I have the meeting minutes from July 12th. Gary Gaishel presented this information and they voted to approve the 824. That just basically means that the Planning Commission has no problem if we were to do any improvements in that town right away. That's all that means. That's not, that's not approval to go through without the board and funding and all that. It's just saying that the Planning Commission is okay. So at the very least, we want to verify that. That's a statutory requirement by the state. So we've done that. So then we moved into just kind of refining the design process, and we've also sent some town staff out to do some surveying just to verify the property lines. We plan to continue to send town staff out to do surveying of the land. So, right now this conceptual design was just done off of LiDARs, which are fairly accurate. But we would want to just make sure that, if we move forward with any kind of a design that we're doing our due diligence there. But basically we did a feasibility to see if it's even possible to construct the road. And what you see on this board in front of you it's just a visual aid that I brought up. It's not, it's the plan, the concept plan. I'm not going to get into the weeds of that. I can address any questions that you may have regarding the actual design. But basically, I'm just here to present to you that it is in fact possible to design a road that the engineering department would consider adequate for emergency vehicles via the connection, a potential connection between Stonywood and Romagna. So I'll wait. I'll answer any questions that you may have, but I'll just say that I want to reiterate that this would not be, our intention is not to take any action tonight. It's just to keep you in the loop that this is something that we're looking at and working with the first selectman to potentially identify some funding for this. We have reached out to FEMA thinking there was maybe an opportunity there. They've got back to us and said that they won't fund emergency access roads, but there may be other sources available, and we'd like to have a design ready, because sometimes when these funding sources come up, it's a very short suspense to actually get any kind of application in. So the idea would be to have a plan and then potentially identify funding, but that would also include coming back to the board for an actual action to decide that that's something that the town wants to do. And also, obviously invite members of the public to come to that and be able to express any of their concerns, etc. So this is by no means the end of where it stops. You'll see me again to discuss the same item when we feel that we're ready to actually move forward with any kind of application or construction, if that makes sense. But I can take any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Alex?
Yep.
Yeah, I know you're at that conceptual design stage, but do you have a ballpark idea of what cost would be to construct the road?
Yeah,
Or the
so
road that
we-
you've envisioned at this point?
Mhm. We put a engineering estimate together, but this was some time ago, so this estimate would certainly have to be revisited. But as I recall, I believe it was between $100,000 and $150,000. But again, with the way things are, that would certainly need to be revisited. But I think that should give you an order of magnitude idea, and that would depend on what kind of surfacing we'd want to use for that. And there's some things that could be what kind of barrier system would want to be used that could drive that cost, plus or minus a few $1,000s. We just kind of said we would have a couple bollards with a chain and a lock that only Public Works and Emergency Management Services would have the code for, and things like that. But yeah, we had, I think, between 100 and 150,000 when we did the estimate, I believe. That was like last fall, so shouldn't be too far off of that.
There was a point when the infrastructure bill was signed that there was some information coming to the towns about, possible dates for applications and this and that. So somewhere in the universe of COVID funding, the infrastructure bill is not clear. I mean, it's not clear about the accessibility of the funding and so forth. So just wondering how you manage that aspect of things. I mean, I know you contacted FEMA. They're telling you there might be other sources. Is that other source the infrastructure bill, potential dollars? Do you have a sense of that at all?
Yeah, so the infrastructure bill is broken out into several programs, both new programs and existing programs that have been around, or programs that used to exist that have been revitalized because of funding. There is one other fund that we're looking into. It has an acronym. I can't recall what the acronym is off the top of my head, but it is another general emergency management type of fund. But at the time that it was still much in its infancy and applications and guidelines weren't clear, so this would be a good time to revisit that. I have my notes on what that program is, but basically, whether it be from FEMA, whether it be from the IIJ infrastructure bill, or some other funding source that is routinely put out by the federal or state government, it's basically just, the idea would be to have a design ready that we could execute.
Okay.
And then kind of keep our eye out for these things. CCM has been incredibly helpful in highlighting key, like in email blasts to the departments, has been very helpful in highlighting key grant opportunities or funding opportunities and what they pertain to for municipal government. Our SCCOG partners for the Regional Council of Governments has been very helpful in sending out emails with potential things. So we have a lot of eyes are on this money and doing what they can to actually make it accessible for municipalities. It is a lot.
That's just it's good to know, because
Absolutely.
I feel like it's a piece that's gotten a little lost because
Yep.
we don't necessarily get that information, but other departments within the town are
Yep.
getting that direct information.
Yeah, and it
Okay.
is, you're right, it is a little bit chaotic.
Yeah.
There's just so much out there right now. But that's why I'd like to just reiterate, it's always good to have these designs and do the due diligence, because then when something does come up, you can meet these deadlines rather than trying to scramble to put a package together when you see that something is available. So we have several concepts for various types of projects around town that may never leave the conceptual phase. I believe this is a project that, with all the major factors involved, should leave that conceptual phase. It's just a matter of identifying where that money's going to come from, or if it's at a point where it has to be planned into our capital rotation or something like that. But better to have the information prepared in either circumstance.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Alex?
Just on the concept, is the idea to have, would it be a tarred road or would it be gravel, just
So-
for emergency access?
So typically, we would have a gravel-based surface, but because of the slope, we have a 10% grade, which is very steep. It's the steepest that we would allow any town road in our planning regulations. We would likely surface that probably with pavement, at the very least asphalt millings or something with hardness to resist washing out. The best thing to do would be to pave it, only because since it is an emergency access road, it wouldn't get the same kind of routine maintenance per se that a regular road would, and it wouldn't get the traffic, frankly, that a regular road would either, which even though it wears on the surface, it does help, actually clear the path, and people are going out over every day and reporting issues. So the road would be inspected, and we would ensure that we have it on some kind of a rotation to make sure that it's accessible in case of emergencies. But the portion that is really steep would need most likely an asphalt pavement to just resist over time for erosion. And then the portion that is substantially flatter, that actually is the portion that when you come off of Romagna Road where the two properties are, to a point at least past the two dwellings, would be substantially flatter, like 2%, and only have no more than 1 or 2 feet of fill. So we wouldn't change the landscape very much between the two homes until you get to the back where the hill is, and we would bring in some fill there, and that's where we could change the surface if we didn't want to pave the whole thing for any reason. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does.
Probably more than you needed for
No,
a question.
no.
I just wanted to be clear because
The engineer.
what I'm getting at is there are options,
Yeah.
but the steepness of the road will need to be considered when thinking of what to pave it with, where
With the surface,
normally we would like to use just gravel, and that's not the case here.
yeah, you gotta have enough traction too, so some kind of a surface that will
Yep.
bite into the tires. One other question, so that's connecting Hillwood and Romagna Road, is that right? And then Hillwood feeds out into Bush Hill Drive?
I think it's Stonywood.
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 But yeah.
Oh, Stonywood, okay.
Yep, correct.
Yeah.
It's your first, when you come onto Bush Hill, your very first right turn.
Right,
It would be, it's a right turn and you start to climb, a
Yeah.
fairly steep climb similar to what this grade would be. And there's an area that's leveled out
right.
that we would make this connection.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, just one.
Yeah.
I was wondering, how long is this road gonna be?
So it's going to be about 350 feet long. I didn't remember off the top of my head. Apologies for that, but
Okay,
just wanted to check.
okay.
Okay, any other questions?
No,
All right, Alex, thank you, especially for giving out, the heads up so that,
yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
when it comes head, or as it moves forward, it's something that we have some background on. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you very
And now
much.
it's okay, go enjoy your birthday. Okay, moving on, and this is just a really quick discussion update for section under Route 161 DOT corridor study. We have some Zoom meetings on a regular basis. Joe and Alex are normally on them as well. Coming up right now, the schedule is for October 27th. It's a Thursday at 6 p.m. at the high school auditorium, where they'll do, the engineer and DOT will be here to do a presentation on what is going to be planned. And this is from basically the high school all the way down to the intersection with 156 here. They'll cover it. They'll tell you what they've done. They've done speed surveys, accident surveys. They've been doing a lot of work on this. And obviously the first phase will be the one coming up as far as where Industrial Park Road comes in. Then the second phase will be moving down. And one of the things they're talking about is, they want input from the public, bike lanes, that type of thing, sidewalks. that type of thing. And, why if people say, well, look, we need more traffic lights, they'll have the answers as to why no, you really don't type of thing. But they've done a really good job. Joe, you've been on all those meetings pretty much. You agree that they have done some really thorough work up to this point?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and here again, I asked them after the last meeting, can you give us a draft of what you've shown us so far? They go, nah, it's a draft, and they don't want drafts out there because they do change and, it gives out the wrong information. And while we're on the Route 161 corridor, we've noticed that finally there is no longer a Starlight Motel. The mobile station is going to be coming down very quickly. And actually, we got a little bit of a benefit out of that I may have mentioned in the past. Dick Morris, who's very much involved with the yacht club, said the doors on the mobile station were just what they needed to replace damaged doors at the yacht club. So I contacted the engineer from the state. They said no problem. So just before, if you'll notice when you walk out, the front doors are gone because the state let us take those. But the state's been very cooperative there whenever I've reached out to them as far as what's going on with the project and so forth. And they're going to pretty much finish up there and then slowly move north to the old Bootleggers restaurant and then to the mobile station. And so just an update that, but lots more to come on the DOT corridor study. And like I said, next spring is I think it's going to be really a fun time for a lot of construction up there.
So you said the date was October 21?
7th.
7th.
As of right now. And the thing too is they've included, since it will involve, it does involve the entrance to the high school up there. Chris Lunt, their facilities director, has been pretty much at every meeting as well. So they're really good at making sure they're including everybody that they feel has a stake in the project as it moves forward. So moving on, we're here to take action on the solid waste ordinance. I sent it out yesterday with all the changes, I highlighted the yellows that were done. Joe, do you want to speak to this at all, or any comments you want to make to it?
Joe Bergo, Public Works Director. Yeah, we came before we had the public hearing, and the best take I had is there was two things that came up in the public hearing. One was an indemnification clause. That was in trying to put this together. The last portion of it was truncated, and by no fault of any, it just did so. And I fully agreed with all the people said it that you can't just have saying that the town has no responsibility when they come in the private road. So the section in the document you had all the stuff that was actually in the original document that got cut out. And the more important part of this, notwithstanding the foregoing, the owner of the private road and a property shall not be required to indemnify and save harmless the town of East Lyme from and against any damage to property or injuries to persons arising out of negligence or willful misconduct of the town or the employees. They don't want our garbage trucks to plow through a neighborhood and knock everything and damage everything and then indemnify us. So that addresses their issue. The one other issue they had was the fact, and it was about that some of these age-restricted development should include it because they don't have any other. They don't have kids in the school system, so that the issue I have is we're not doing anything to anyone that's in an existing thing, and going forward, if anyone buys into it, they'll at least know. So, but there is tax implications to these things, so we're trying not to grow the service because all these private roads are developing, and private roads are typically very packed in, dense, narrow roads, everything like that. That's why they're private. And it's very difficult to get our trucks in and out. So I think that portion of it, we didn't really do much to it, but that's your guys' decision. The main purpose was to get control of our collection. We get a lot of people, before COVID, I didn't realize how important garbage was to everyone, life, liberty, and the pursuit of garbage pickup. So this is trying to control that. It's included, the disposal of the garbage is included in the taxes, we get it, but we have to do it in an efficient manner, and this is what you do. You got to buy a can, the can's not included, I get yelled at a lot, it should be in the taxes, but the can, you have to buy the can, it says in here, the spacing of the cans, all the stuff that allows people to have the garbage. So I think this is a good step forward. It was an old document that had a lot of old provisions in it. I hope the board moves forward this, and we can then have a good system, and I think we provide a good service to the town by doing this.
Okay, any questions for Joe regarding the changes or anything else in the proposal,
Yeah.
ordinance?
So the town right now has definitions for what roads have to be, certain widths and diameters and
Well,
turnarounds and,
yes, there's parameters and there's town-approved roads. But what, for example, Rocky Neck Village just came on board. The Cove, they called up and they wanted us to start picking up garbage there because they're kind of townhouses. And then they might find another place that we might go. Over the years, we've gone into some private roads. So yes, there's standards, 20-foot minimum width. I mean, you have to have an acceptable turnaround. A lot of these places have, like, the turnarounds are half the size of what, even fire trucks have a hard time getting in these places.
I don't disagree that some places aren't good places, safe places to bring a long truck in through. My question would be, if we're going to say any new developments have to meet, the way I would look at it is any new development has to meet the town requirements for road dimensions and whatever they're listed as, then would you have exception to the fact that a new development goes in, but their roads all conform to town requirements?
We work with the zoning board because it usually starts in zoning and land use, and that's when I hear about these things, like Rocky Neck Village. And so if something is acceptable for us to get in and it's something that we can do.
The roads look exactly like you would build a road.
Yeah, it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. Yeah, then
Well,
I don't see why we can't do that, but I do know that, I think we made the right choice on the Rocky Neck Villages and those was because trash is going to be a big problem in this town as far as the cost of it. So we're trying to keep that under control. But yes,
And also, I think one of the reasons developers try to save money is, making it to town standards and so forth, but that's going to cost them a lot more money, which is why they sometimes go with the private roads.
But that's a choice they make, right? I mean, if we put in this regulation that if the road meets the town requirements, then we can service them, then that's the developer's choice. He can say, I'm going to save money, I'm going to put little streets in, or I'm going to try to service my people and I'm going to put in real roads with real widths and all that stuff. And that's not our decision. That just says that if their road conforms to our requirements, then we will pick up their trash. As far as what they were saying about, old people, small people, whatever, not being able to use a dumpster, there's no requirement, I don't think, that they have to have dumpsters, right? The private roads could put in individual cans and they could pick them up themselves.
Rocky Neck Village is doing that right now.
Yeah. So I mean,
they have CWPM come in.
I heard the argument for the dumpsters, and I'm like, well, that's one solution, but there are other solutions. That's to me, it's all empowering the people that put in these developments to do what they want to do. But if you want us to pick up the trash, you got to meet our requirements. If you want to do something else, that's fine, have fun.
Yeah.
But I would want to see a paragraph in there that says that if you meet town dimensions, requirements, whatever, however you want to define the characteristics of our roads, then we would be willing to treat you just like everybody. I mean, they're still taxpayers, right? We still would want to service them, I would think, like we do everybody else.
We could put that in. I'm not sure why they'd build a road to town standard and not have a town road, because there's so much. The reason they go private roads is for that reason, is so they can shrink them. And so that. But I understand what you're saying, and if that needs to be put in.
Bill, on D where it says all new private roads and/or private developments, we could put at that fail to. I'm sorry.
That don't meet town standard. That's what you just call town standard.
51.06. Paragraph D.
Where it says not expanding the service?
Not expanding the service. It says the town has no intention, so we could probably make a modification to that where it'll say all new private roads and/or private developments. Bill, what wording did you have?
So what I put in here, I actually put an E, and I said all new private roads must conform to town published standards prior to being considered for curbside trash pickup. Private roads that do not conform to these published standards must provide private contractors, curbside, community dumpster pickup, etc. So I guess I did kind of supersede D with my own D.
Yeah, I would think maybe just all new private roads are failing to meet, whatever.
Yeah, town road standards.
Failing to meet town road standards.
As determined by the department. Because, I mean, someone might have a 20-foot wide road, but it's a condo complex.
Okay, failing to
We're
meet.
not going into a condo complex, we shouldn't be going into condo
That do not
complexes.
meet-
It's not.
Failing
And all those
to-
other things.
What's that?
And cul-de-sac sizes
Yeah.
and all those other things that you
Correct.
need to turn your trucks around safely.
Yeah, it's town standard, yep.
Yeah.
Town road standards according to what, Bill? I mean, Joe?
As determined by the town.
Department.
I mean, just so we're the ones that are the filings
I say
say, yes,
determined by
it
the
meets.
town, because that makes, that wouldn't
Because-
limit it to Joe. We
Yeah,
get
take it
Joe.
out of the department, as determined by the town.
Zoning's gonna be the first line of defense, and when a new development comes in, zoning's gonna say, here's what you need. And then your department's gonna come in here, I think, behind them and say, yes, we can drive a truck there or we can't.
Yeah,
But I
we
would
we
think
have
the
we have no
zoning
problem with
regulation-
that, and we're doing that in certain areas, but it just, we're trying to get in safely, and
Yes,
it's very challenging.
I'm just trying to find that middle road that says
Thank
that
you.
if that's what they wanna do, then they can do that, and if not, then
That's a
that's
good
on, you know.
suggestion.
Okay, here's what I have for what it would read, that last sentence for D.
All,
All new private roads and/or private developments failing to meet town road standards as determined by the town need to provide a private contractor to address their garbage and recycling needs.
So I kind of have an unrelated question, but
Sure.
Is everyone okay with that before we
Well,
move on to?
Do you wanna add to that, that the department has the?
No, I like the town. I mean, I don't, the whole purpose of this is so we're a town. We're not,
Yeah.
we don't want to be, tyrants and dictators, and we want to do the right thing. And that's why town is the right thing to say. However, a lot of times I think we're making this stuff up. We have the board of selectmen that are telling the taxpayers of this town how we're going to do it, and that's what this document's all about. So I have no problem with saying the
And I
town.
think zoning has to be part of it too, because
yeah.
the developer doesn't want to go in and after they're all done, have somebody say, nope, your roads don't conform, so we're not going to pick it up. They should know that day one, not day whatever at the end.
I think that's why you leave the town, because that means, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
are there any places now that you're going that the trucks have trouble
Oh, absolutely.
managing? And, but
And-
you're going to continue going there because?
Yeah, because we have been. Because that
Because
would
you
then
have
get in
adopted.
the people that came up and said you're
Yes.
changing things,
Yes.
they pay taxes, they bought into it based on getting that, so
Yeah.
you'd be changing the way we do business.
No, I know. I just
By
wanted to make
change to
sure.
the new developments, you're not changing what, they know what they're buying themselves into.
Okay.
So there is a distinction. So,
Okay.
there's about 15 locations that we go to that are private developments. We go into Sea Spray condos, go to Failer Apartments, we go into the Chapman Woods, Chapman Farms, Whitegate Farm. There's a long list. And they're all private properties, and we have no permission to go on them. So this will address that. We're going to start going in. We have a document that now that the framework is set, we'll work, be fair with them, but work with the town attorney who's already done with 2 developments. And we'll just get them to sign, basically saying they give us permission. We'll have the right indemnification. Then any provision things like going in Sea Spray condos, I don't know why we ever went up there, that we started going there before, but we did change the thing that they have to put all their cans on one side, so it's one in, one out. Because if you have cans, it's too tight up there to go on both sides. They forget that the arm is on one side, so we can't go in and then loop backwards. They have to have them out by 7. We're not getting any more cans up there. Whoever has them, that's it, because they have dumpsters. So, yeah, that's where we're at.
So, kind of unrelated, but can fire trucks get into all these little private roads?
I mean, the fire departments would have to speak, but it's very difficult and challenging.
I'm just thinking there's a fire, they need to get in there, so why? I
The,
mean,
the trucks can get in, but here again, our trucks are worried about things such as going over curbs,
Yeah, they're not
lawns
worried
and
about that. in the
Fire truck will do what's necessary to get there, as well as if necessary, get someone to get a car out of the way very quickly and stuff like that too.
So if a truck runs on your lawn, you're not going to complain.
And we're,
Yeah.
we're-
No, I
if
know,
it doesn't
but I'm
have a
just-
proper
just wondering.
cul-de-sac, we're gonna go in and we need to properly get around. That fire truck's gonna roll in there, they don't care what's happening.
Yeah,
They're
they'll
setting
worry
up
about,
shop,
yeah,
block the
they'll
road.
getting out later.
They'll be there for 6 hours if they have to,
Yeah.
and back down the road, but we have to effectively
Yeah.
get it in and out.
I just want to make sure that people are going to get, services if it's.
Oh, yeah,
emergency.
I'm
That was
only
my main
speaking for
concern.
garbage.
Okay.
They still get fire coverage.
Okay.
Yeah, oh no, they still,
Yeah,
get
just wanted to
covered.
make sure that.
Very, that's a good point though. Anyway, all right, any other comments on that, on the ordinance? Thank everybody for their input, and to the members of Chapman Woods that came out, we appreciated them bringing something to our attention that really needed to be brought to our attention, so,
Yeah.
Thank you.
thank you.
all right, so
It would be as amended too, because we did make that
Yes.
correction.
Okay. Move to adopt the amendment to the ordinance entitled Ordinance Regulating the Storage, Collection, and Disposal of Solid Waste. Let me just see where I can put that in. Presented at a public hearing before the Board of Selectmen on October 3rd, August 3rd, 2022. So let me go back, and where should we say, move to adopt the amendment as, because we have an amendment, which has now been amended, correct? Is that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this isn't the August 3rd version, this
Right.
is the September
Right.
7th version,
Right.
because he had it in the yellow
Yeah,
section.
so now we have to,
So maybe you want to say the version dated September 7th.
As amended.
Yes.
As amended on,
As amended.
yeah,
yes.
on September 7th.
Yeah, so let's start over let's just, yeah, go. Yes,
Because it has to go before, so you have to keep that date.
Okay.
yeah, so let's see.
We do have to keep that date, now it's pointed out by town attorney.
It's on a public hearing, so do we need the question, do we need do we need another?
No, we do not need another public hearing.
Right.
We
we
don't.
already had it.
I talked to Ed O'Connell
Yeah,
about that
about that
yesterday, just to be sure. He
Just to
said,
be clear, in
no,
case
we
there
don't.
was a
Actually,
last-
to Ed O'Connell
okay.
and Mark Zamarka yesterday.
Okay,
And they
great.
both agreed.
Okay.
One of
that's
them
fine.
didn't.
So the public hearing was August 3rd, I'm sorry I misspoke when I said
Yeah.
that.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
But, okay, so.
How about
can
move
get
to
this?
adopt the
Yeah,
amended,
Yeah, I'm just
So move to
not.
adopt the amendment to the ordinance.
I was gonna say, move to adopt the amended ordinance entitled, because it has been amended. We did it with what Joe had added to it for the indemnification and the amendment we put there.
So
So
after the
to
ordinance-
adopt the amendment to the ordinance entitled, and then that will cover what was presented at the public hearing before the Board of Selectmen on August 3rd, 2022.
So after the August 3rd, 2022, why don't you put end amended 9/7/22?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
would-
what I'm
you
thinking
wanna put-
too.
yeah.
I think we need something at the end, not the
Okay,
beginning.
all right, sure.
So, and our date is, okay, so.
Bill,
move-
you and I should just let the attorneys.
Yeah.
Sorry,
we usurped or whatever yours.
Unfortunately, as an engineer, and
That's okay, but that's all right, we need both, both here. Move to adopt the amendment to the ordinance entitled Ordinance Regulating the Storage, Collection, and Disposal of Solid Waste, presented at a public hearing before the Board of Selectmen on August 3rd, 2022, and as amended on September 7th, 2022.
I think that's good.
That
Correct.
covers every
Yeah,
topic.
Perfect.
The effect, and you don't have to write that in. The effective date of the ordinance shall be 10 days after publication of the notice of its adoption.
So, yeah, we don't put a date because whenever it gets noticed, then send it, okay. All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so it's seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And it carries unanimously. Thank you for all your input on that and for helping us get through the wording at the end.
I know.
Moving on, Roseanne had asked that we hold off on the charge and moving forward because she couldn't be here tonight. So, she's up in Maine and considering, trying to recover from the loss of her husband. I said, not a problem. But I just thought we could discuss this a little bit more tonight. And Chikella brought up some good points last time about, identify some areas. Town attorney's going to give us a couple, and I've identified some that I'll mention. Some are more involved, others are just simple housekeeping type of things. One of the things too is it have to be completed by the end of August because Karen Galbo and Registrar pointed out the Secretary of State's going to want the ballots by September of next year because it'll go on with the municipal election if that's how we move forward. Issues that I've addressed, and this is I went through previous, some what people have brought to me, and I've also reviewed previous charter revisions. One is the Board of Selectmen, instead of 2-year terms, consider 4-year terms. That's been rejected in a couple, but that's something that keeps resurfacing. I know Salem did that, you know, the first time it's a staggered, and then from that point on, it's a 4-year term, so you'd have 6 people running for 3 vice, 6 running for 5. The next one, same thing with the first selectman, is that a 2 or a 4-year? Do we keep that, do we consider moving that to a 4-year term or keep it at 2? Again, some towns have kept that at 2, but going to the 4-year Board of Selectmen. Waterford, New London do 4-year terms. Others is, do we consider a town manager or a town administrator? And, you know, would that complement or, and here again, I'm not saying I'm in favor of that or against it, but those are a couple of things that have been brought up to me, you know, at least that should be something that they should consider. One thing I hear from almost everyone is the automatic referendum. That has cost us over the last 15 years over $100,000 and very low, for the most part, turnouts. And there's always been a method in place to where you could obtain signatures prior to the town meeting to force it to go to referendum anyway, or possibly look at setting a percent at a threshold to where, okay, if it goes above a certain percent, then it automatically goes to referendum. As we talked earlier tonight, the town meeting, right now, anything above $10,000 has to go to a town meeting. Everything today is over $10,000. So, you know, possibly looking at moving that up to you know, 25 to 35,000, considering where costs are now. Because like what we saw tonight, even if we moved up to 25,000, we would still have to have a town meeting because of where it was. But that takes me to the next one. Kevin, this may be, I think I introduced everyone to Kevin Gervais, but most towns have a grant account. So when you get grants such as these, they go into the account because it's not something that you have to, you're not taxing people for. And it already goes through an approval process. So this is where when it comes up, it can go right to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, and not the extra 2+ weeks sometimes to go to a town meeting. And we're very fortunate Gene Cushman does not charge us the $500. He could for moderating a town meeting, but he could. One other thing I had to was filling vacancies on elected boards. Right now, if, with the exception of Board of Selectmen, every other is a 4-year term. And if someone resigns a year and a half into it, you appoint somebody, well then 6 months later they have to run again to fill, because they're filling and this, from what I've been told by both Wendy Sims, one of the registrars, and Karen Galbo, the Secretary of State has said that can be confusing, and it'd be better to have somebody fill it for the remainder of the term. You know, obviously, that's one of the things that they've been recommended. So at least, I'm not saying I'm in favor for it, but just consider it. Of course, here again, somebody could get elected and resign 2 days into it, and then you appoint somebody for 4 years. But, you know, but that's one of the things here.
Yeah,
And then a few,
I don't like
but those
that.
are just one of the things that they've been, the Secretary of State office, they have said is asked to look at doing. Those are the primary, what I would consider the major ones I would consider. Also, too, and I think you need to address, too, the absence of the first selectman, because when the governor, if the governor's outside the state, the lieutenant governor becomes the acting governor. Right now, if the first selectman is absent, but absent nowadays is, you can be, you know, half the world away, and, you know, you'd be contacted within a few minutes. So I think, you know, that's something that you might need to address. Okay, if you're out of state for more than X amount of time, then the deputy possibly takes over, is considered, or any time, because when I left from vacation, I notified everybody, the department heads, that Ann was acting, and I think that might not be a bad thing to do too. Is if the first selectman is going to be absent, he needs to notify the remaining members of the Board of Selectmen and the town department head, so there's no question as to who to contact. And then just a few cleanup things. Right now, the assessor, according to the charter, is a 4-year appointment. I don't think that's something we have a director of health in there. We have a health district now. Appointed offices, we have tree wardens. We have constables, those don't really, that doesn't exist anymore, and our tree warden right now, there's an effort, we'd like to incorporate that as part of the Public Works Director's duties moving forward, which is great if, in Joe's case, because he's a town resident, but that might not be the case at some point in time. And then some appointed officers, the chief is the Emergency Management Director. He moved out of town for a short period of time, which would, technically, he would have had it, and he was just doing that until he could get back into town. So he is back now, but here again, he would have had to step down as the Emergency Management Director, but he'd still be the chief. And, you know, he's doing a very good job in that, and, you know, fortunately, that's resolved itself. So those are just some cleanup things I have, thinking of moving forward. And those are just my issues. I don't know if anybody else had any they wanted to bring forward.
I didn't have any yet on substantive provisions of the charter, but just in terms of process, two things. One, with respect to topics, I was thinking that somehow tapping into our former first selectman, yourself plus former first selectman suggestions, because there must be some, the charter's been around for a while, so there must be some thought on that or opinion on that. So I thought that input from Mr. Formica, Beth Hogan, Wayne Fraser, etc.
The only person I haven't, and I was talking to Beth Sunday at the breakfast, but I forgot to ask her because we were talking about something after. That's what I was going to ask for input from them.
Right.
I have asked, but not from her. So that is something that, with the exception of her, I've reached out for.
And then in terms of the membership of the subcommittee that would be, making the recommendations to us, I still can sort of hear Attorney O'Connell saying, be sure they're individuals who understand the mechanisms of government and how government works and understand the time commitment and make sure they're objective. So I guess when we, look at who might be on this committee, that we consider those things, because there are many subcommittees that people can serve on, but this one is, a pretty meaty one. So some way of, whether it doesn't have to be the resume, but it has to be something where we, interview them or we speak to them or something as a board. Does that make sense to?
I think that's very. I think Ed made a very good point where he's saying, you don't want to come. You want to come with some ideas, but not to the point where you're going to,
drive
you're basically this is it or nothing else. And here again, I've looked at, and 9 to 11 seems to be the number. In today's world, 11 is a lot of people, especially if you're trying to get quorums. So I mean, I would think I'd be open to either 9 or 11, but I'm leaning towards 9. We can have, the Board of Ed has very much indicated they'd like to have a member, but Mariana Stevens has indicated her interest in serving on it. They're a business manager, and I talked to a couple of their members. They said that would be okay with them
that's
too.
A good
they'd feel comfortable with that too. And we have to be careful too with appointing people. We still have minority representation too. So if we did, you could never have more than 5 or.
I thought it was 3, isn't it?
No, 3. You could have 3. You could have 3. You could have no more than 3 elected officials serving on it. But minority representation, you could have. If you had 9, you could have 5 Republicans or 4 Democrats, or vice versa.
Gotcha.
Or you could have, or you could have 5. You couldn't exceed more than 5 or 6 if it was 11, because I know there's a couple on affiliates that I think would be very good to be members, because I think Marianne Stevens is unaffiliated. I don't know, but I think she is.
I think part of it's going to be driven by how many questions you have and how many subcommittees you form. Because if you end up forming 4 or 5 subcommittees, then you're going to want the 11 people. If you're going to have, if somehow or another you can group all these questions, I mean, you just rattled off quite a few questions, right?
Yeah. But I mean, but this doesn't mean this is what we move forward. We have to all agree together on this.
I understand that. I'm just saying that if all these 5, 6 questions went forward, you're going to want 11 people, because you're going to have at least 3 subcommittees with 2 people, 4 people each. So I think that's going to drive some of the
Okay.
committee size.
So these committees aren't gonna be together deciding?
The year that I was on
Yeah.
we had land use was one subcommittee. So anything that had to do with combining zoning and planning, and there was something else. We had like 3 different land use issues. So
Okay.
we took care of those. There was a financial group that took all the financial ones, and there was the town manager one. I think it was just a subcommittee just looking at town managers.
Okay.
So I mean, it's kind of, it's going to depend on the questions, and if we can say, okay, these 3 live together and these 3 live together, but this guy's by himself, and that means, you know, there's how many subcommittees, and then how many people does it take to staff that many subcommittees? I think that's going to kind of.
So once you were like a subcommittee, then how did it go? Like, then did you come back together?
Oh, yeah,
with
on a
the
regular
public and
basis, yeah.
discuss everything?
Yeah, on a regular basis, we would give status reports. I was a chairman of one committee, so I would go and I would report to the committee of the whole on some kind of regular basis, but we would have our subcommittee meeting on a more frequent basis.
Okay.
Have you heard interest in the town manager? I, years ago, heard about it a lot.
I've
but
heard it
lately
from
I
a
just-
couple people, but I hear a lot of more of the things that people are comfortable with things the way they are, but maybe add some type of another assistant to the first selectman's office.
Yeah.
Because one thing I've noticed, you know, some days, and Sandy can attest to this too, is, you know, you might want to, okay, I want to sit down and spend today looking at some type of an item that that you want to do with a town such as this, and then a garbage complaint comes in, and now you wind up, you know, or like a union issue comes up, that you wind up doing that too, which, you know, is part of the job. I understand that, and I have no problem doing it, but it just sometimes takes you away from your focus for a couple hours. And here again, the people have a legitimate concern, so it needs to be addressed. Fortunately, with department heads, once you get them to the right one, it's always almost always resolved. So, but no, I haven't heard a lot about that, except that you know other towns have done it. I look at New London; they had done that. They had gone away from to a town manager from a strong mayor decades ago. Now they've gone back. Hartford's done it. I think the only towns in the area, Groton Town does it, but Groton City doesn't. Groton City has a strong mayor, which is one town. But
But these are all kind of big cities. Any like littler towns?
yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I look at Waterford has
comparable.
Norwich has a town manager, but I can't think of anyone else in the area that does.
And that's again, this is quite a few years ago that I was on it, but it seemed like the bigger towns, it makes more sense because you've got a lot of things that you have to have a lot of experience in different areas. Where in a smaller town, you've got to wear a lot of different hats, and you can't just be that financial guy that just worries about finances and everything else.
Well, I think we've
But
addressed. I think
just
what
my-
we've done
my-
we have an IT director now. We have a police chief. We have an HR director. We've done we've done a lot of things now that are going to help build that infrastructure without, because the town manager would have to make more than any of the department heads, which would be because most of the department heads make more than I do, which is fine, but because they work probably harder than I do, but yeah, but that's just something that comes up. That we don't have to recommend that, and then. But here again, once the charter is open, the committee could decide. Well, you said no, but we want to. I mean,
Just like again, twice now, I think the zoning planning combination thing.
Yep,
came
that
up.
always comes up.
But I think the 2 boards are working closer together, and I don't feel that friction.
No, there's
Like
not a
with the planning
friction.
commission, I don't feel that. It just seems like for whatever reason they're getting along much better.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I don't see that as being necessary. But again, this is just kind of my just reviewing your list, and
Yeah, I
and
mean,
I think bringing up to date things like the automatic referendum and things like that. I've always thought 2 years for the first selectman was silly because it takes you 2 years to figure out where your office is at. I mean, it just
6 months maybe. But
yeah.
no,
But I mean,
Sandy
2
shows
months-
me where to go now.
Yeah, the first 2 years, if you start rotating every 2 years, it just seems silly. It takes at least 2 years to really get into all the idiosyncrasies of the town and everything else, and 2 years just doesn't make any sense to me, but that's my opinion. So anyway, I didn't have anything addition that I would add or subtract.
Okay. It sounds like, though, considering where we might go, we might want to look at probably 11 members. And I've had several people reach out to me indicated an interest, and if they're affiliated with a party, I'm referring them back to their town committees or to the town chair, so it should come up through them. And then I've had some unaffiliates that would be very good and have served the town in the past as well. And the nice thing is, pretty much everybody that's come forward are people who've got experience, and they said that we understand the challenges, and they honestly want to try and make it better. Make the charter more efficient and serve the members of the community and the town better.
So to Ann's point, is your goal to come up with 11 candidates, or would your goal to be come up with 20 candidates and then we down select to 11?
I think we come up with 11 candidates, because I think it'd be hard to come up here and then publicly just say no, this person is. I think we
It
bring.
doesn't have to be a public. I mean, it could be.
Well, no.
Yeah, but it's.
No, I think that'd be too. I mean, I think I think all of us have been involved long enough to where, we know who, puts the interest of the town above, any specific issue that they feel firm about.
It's also, I think, relevant to have people with different backgrounds.
Oh, very much so.
Because people then bring different, their different expertise to
And
the
perspective.
different issues.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, looking at the last couple things, Bill, I think it looked that way pretty much in the last charter revision. Or were you in the one in 2008 or the one before that?
Before that.
Okay. But it looked as if it was a good cross-section of members of the
Yes,
community.
need that, yeah.
And here again, there's plenty of public hearings where people will be able to have input to say what they'd like to see done.
And just to follow up, when we were picking, I was on the subcommittee for the director of finance, and
Yeah.
I really felt like that group had a very good rapport
Oh, it
and
was.
different
Yeah.
different skills that we all
Yeah.
kind of brought to the table. So that's kind of what I would want to see.
That's what I'd like to see too. I mean, obviously, look how good they did.
It was unanimous.
Yes. But no, I agree with that. So, okay, if over the next couple of weeks, moving into the next meeting, if you think of items that you'd like done, and then, because we need to decide as a group which ones we move forward, and which ones we don't. Like the town meeting for the, moving that from 10,000, I mean, that's, the only thing is what dollar figure are we gonna recommend? There are some easy ones here, but there are some difficult ones too, so.
And there was a conversation about the last town meeting, the annual town meeting, about talking about something other than just the budget. Basically a State of the Union kind of conversation. And I thought about that, and it's like, it doesn't really have to go in the charter, though. That's the kind of thing that you can
No,
just
see,
do.
that just said
not
to,
everything.
and that just said to require a state of the city or state of the town, just, a discussion. And here again, the sad thing is with the automatic referendum, if you took out employees and elected board and commission members, we had 8 people at the annual town meeting this year. And I can remember with a couple, when it was 200 or 300 people at those.
Well, if there's a conflict, they can come out.
Yeah, no, that's just it too. But even at that, that's not, they'll show up for the vote, but here again, at the town meeting, all you're doing is, you're adjourning to the referendum. That's already been determined by the boards of selectmen, education and finance at that point.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you, everyone. All right, moving on, ex officio reports. Dan?
My Wellsco meeting got canceled. They couldn't get into Waterford High School to hold the meeting, so I don't have a report.
Oh,
With mine.
good. Dan?
Nothing to report.
Okay.
Next week I have some meetings, yeah.
No. And?
Okay, so on the East Lyme Harbor Management Shellfish Commission, we received notice that the harbor master, Ron Johnson, basically has resigned. It was effective immediately last week, I think it was. So we're in the midst of trying to appoint a new harbor master. I think we're going to have a meeting either, they're debating whether to have it Monday or just have it in the regular course of things. We have to come up with 3 names and then recommend a candidate to Governor Lamont, who will then appoint a person. So that was the big issue with the Harbor Management Commission. Zoning Commission, I went to that meeting on August 4th, and they approved an application for a special permit for elderly housing at 138 Boston Post Road. This included 17 new construction units with an existing family unit also. And then the other one was inland wetlands. I attended last night, and there was an application for the redevelopment of 190, 196, and 202 Flanders Road to include a new 4,200 square foot convenience store. This is where the Citgo station is. It was voted unanimously to have a public hearing due to the significant impact to the wetlands, and also they thought it was a matter of public concern. So this hearing is going to take place at the next meeting of the Inland Wetland Agency next month. The only other thing was we had a woman stand up. She was concerned, very concerned about the condition of Little Indian Pond at Crescent Beach, Niantic. I guess there's a lot of algae, and so there was a good discussion held, and they're going to follow up with the Inland Wetlands agent, Gary Gashel, and it was kind of set forth that there's some pipes that were put in about 10 years ago, and I guess the town maintains the pipes, and the landowners aren't basically in charge of the activities surrounding the pond.
Correct.
So that was kind of the discussion, and the biggest issue, they said, really was drainage. So, you know, the Inland Wetlands is trying to work kind of with the community on this. So that was it for me.
You had a busy month.
Yeah, I'm very busy.
For the quiet month of the year. Okay,
And she
Bill?
was the only one because I don't have anything to report from TVA,
Okay.
Senior Planning.
Okay, just some good stuff. Ann Santor and I were at the Giving Gardens ribbon cutting last week to look at the dedication of the volunteers up there. Marjorie Meekoff with the Pollinator Pathways, what they've done up there. Miss Dinsmore, Denise, I think her name is, but I'm not sure of her first name. But Lisa Picarazzi, Bruce Cohen, and then Bruce gave a really good speech about what they're doing up there and what they want to do to educate our high school students. They want to make it, you know, a part of the curriculum up there for those that wish to do it, to learn how to farm organically and not to, you know, basically, because he pointed out that 11% of the gases that attack the ozone are made by people doing farming, because you're overturning the soil, which you really don't want to do. But it was really good, and over the last couple of years, they've donated over 8,000 pounds of food, organic food, to the needy people. And they were so thankful for the money they got from the American Rescue Plan. It allowed them to do some things, and moving forward is what they talk about doing. So it was just a really fun thing to do. We've read a few articles about our police department, how busy they were. The one with the gun that was thrown out of the car, they recovered because wanted people out of different areas and that. So just some really good work by them. Coming up this Friday night is the Children's Museum Gala, To Be a Child Again. It's going to be at the Pavilion at Rocky Neck. I believe it's sold out too.
Yes.
So yeah. And then at the end of the month, I think it's the 24th, is the Oyster Festival behind St. John's. That's always a fun place to go. Harbor Master, we mentioned, Ann mentioned that. I still continue to, keep talking with Amtrak. They still haven't indicated when they're going to put out that fence in Groton that they might want to see if we want to consider. But interestingly, the growth behind the park we have at the back, it was growing really high, and it's on their side of the fence. For very good reasons, we're not allowed to go on that side of the fence to knock it down, and the fence is made too well for us to get underneath it to cut it. I emailed Jane Brophy at Amtrak. A day and a half later, they were out there taking down. It was done perfectly. I mean, so, I appreciate Amtrak's cooperation with us on many issues there. 185 Main Street. Right now, it looks like Sif Baker will be coming on fairly soon. The building inspector is giving a temporary CO that'll allow the condos and SIF to open, because they need 1,200 amps for everything. Nobody can get 1,200 now. They can get 800. He said for 800, you can only open up to one store. You can't open up the other 3. So at least they're hoping for the end of the month for Sif Bakery. I mean, there's daily progress going on there, so that should be interesting. American Rescue Plan, a couple agencies have come back. The Historical Society, the costs overrun what they were initially said, and this is the old dispatch center to put in the handicap bathroom. So Norm Peck has come to me, so we'll have to discuss what we want to do about possibly, helping them out in this case like that, because there is some funds left in it, and this is a bigger quote than which they were given, so it's, we look into that. I sent you all some information on Airbnbs. And here again, I think there's 3 or 4 properties that we take complaints on, but unfortunately it's spoiling for everybody else. So we're going to try and get the involvement of the community, the areas where this is affected, to try and get everyone's input on this, because some people do depend on some income from this. We don't want to, and they've been doing it for years, and no one ever, they never caused any problem for anybody. So look and see what some other towns have done. Lyme right now is considering looking at a zoning change to where you'd have to register, there'd be a yearly fee, and then if you violate noise, whatever, garbage or whatever, you could get fines, and the fines increase. So we're going to take a look at that, work with zoning too, because the thing is, is it an ordinance issue or is it a zoning issue? So we have to work on that, but I've talked to Barbara Johnson-Lowe from Saunders Point, a couple people from Pine Grove, and a couple people from Oak Grove down by the yacht club. So we are aware of it, and we're moving forward, but what benefits everyone the most is what we want to do. And I think that covers everything. The kids are back to school, and that's it. And we have a new IT director who is been given a tentative offer, a conditional offer, and Parks and Rec started yesterday, and officially takes over on Friday. And there'll be a little farewell luncheon at noon tomorrow for Dave Putnam at the community center. So anybody that could make it, you're more than welcome to show up. Dave would love to see you. And there's also a dinner for him next Tuesday at Langley's. You can get tickets at Parks and Rec if anyone would like to. There's still a few left. And our finance director, Kevin, come up and introduce yourself and a little background. I think most everyone here knows you, but since you're on TV now, we'll let the community get to know you.
Great. How's it going? My name's Kevin Gervais. I'm the town's new finance director. I previously worked at the town of Brookfield as their deputy finance director and controller for 4.5 years. And before that, I was a lovely auditor for municipalities and not-for-profits at PKF O'Connor Davies. Excited to be here, excited to work with you all. I'm looking forward to that grants fund being set up so we don't have to keep doing additional appropriations. It's going to be fun.
Okay, well, we'll be seeing you at a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
I'll be seeing you at even more, because next week is when you and I both sit there at the finance meeting.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
And then they ask a question else. If they say, Kevin, what do you think about this? I'm going to say, I'm going to point to you.
Which Kevin are we talking about?
Well, it has already been a problem here. Joe sent an email today, so I answered him, but he was really asking Kevin. So I said, okay, we got to do Kevin S and Kevin G now, so we know.
Or they call me FK.
FK.
Finance Kevin.
Finance Kevin.
So, yeah.
Or SK. So yeah. Kevin. So, all right. Thank you for coming.
No problem. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Any public comment? Okay.
I have just one
Oh.
comment. If you don't mind. I was looking in the paper on Sunday, and it's, when you say it has a list of municipal meetings, East Lyme wasn't in there.
Really?
No, because I looked, and I was like, oh.
Okay.
This week for sure.
Well, geez, I was just talking to Elizabeth Reagan today, so
Yeah,
I'm talking to her tomorrow too.
Yeah, so because I look at that usually on Sundays just to confirm everything.
I know. It almost okay.
Yeah, so that was my only.
Okay, that's a good point, though. I hadn't noticed that, but thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so any public comment? Bye, Julie.
Bye, Julie.
Kevin, you're all set. You can take off too. You're
Yes.
free to go.
Thank you.
No selectmen's response. So We'll go into executive session, just very briefly on Hathaway, and then to talk about the recent upshoot contract.
So I will make one motion.
Yeah, you can make one.
Okay, move to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing real estate matters, Hathaway Farms LLC, and for the purpose of discussing personnel matters, ongoing union labor negotiations.
Okay.
We're entering into executive session at 8:14 p.m.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We
The board is returned from executive, is returning from executive session at 8:53 p.m. and no formal votes were taken. Okay, and we have a motion, move to authorize the first selectman to enter into the collective bargaining agreement between the town of East Lyme and the United Public Service Employees Union.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any further comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. One more.
Okay, move to adjourn the regular meeting of September 7, 2022 at 8:54 p.m.
Moved to second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you for everything tonight.
You need this back?
No, you can, if you'd like to.
Yeah, look it over.